for people that don't know your story, can we just go through it and
Yeah.
tell it? Because it's when I first heard it, when you came on Nick's podcast in 2022, when I was working there and I met you, I was like, dude, how does the world not know about this guy? Like, how, like, you're just some dude in Austin, Texas with this insanely inspirational story. Like, this guy's got to be on like Joe Rogan, like mainstream news. Like, why do people not know about him? So I'm hoping that we get there at some point,
Yeah.
or it
No,
seems like
absolutely.
we're going in the right direction. But yeah, let's just go through the story because it's so crazy.
Well, and part of it was intentional, just waiting for the right time. And that was
Right.
really the book and getting done with grad school. And again, like being selfish, I'll get into the tenets in a little bit, but the story starts in Austin, Texas, 1985, August 9th, born and raised here. I've loved this city from the moment that I entered this world and lived a completely normal life, baseball and soccer, played sports, got into trouble, excelled in school. I was always a very invested student. And 10 years old, started experiencing some flu-like symptoms, nausea, vomiting, fever. Couldn't figure out what it was, ruled out everything like strep and flu. Ended up getting a blood test, and it turns out it was leukemia. So 5 months of chemotherapy, and I had developed a fungal infection during that time because my counts were so low. My immune system was so weak that an infection set in. I had 2 surgeries a day for 2 weeks, and they went in and excavated my entire nasal cavity. So septum, sinus turbinates, all those are gone. And in between those 2-a-day surgeries, I'd sit in the hyperbaric chamber for an hour to pump pure oxygen in and try and stave off that infection from spreading. Made it through those 5 months, got to go home, went on a Make-A-Wish trip. I was like, I beat cancer. This is great. Got to go see the space shuttle launch in Florida. That was my Make-A-Wish. And then we spent 3 days at Universal Studios. So I was diagnosed in October of 95,
And you
10
were
years old.
10 years old.
Relapse in June of 96. More chemo and radiation ahead of transplant number one. Was only supposed to have one transplant. My donor, his name is Steve Girding, amazing guy from Illinois. We're best friends now,
That's awesome.
but he was unrelated, so he had no idea who it was, and the bone marrow registry keeps it anonymous. Had a transplant, the worst experience I've ever been through, just mouth sores, constant fevers, had a couple seizures. At one point, my temperature spiked to 107.1, which a lot of people can die if your fever gets that high. And I remember, being in this little 2 foot by 3 foot like plastic bin that we made into a makeshift like bath. And I would sit in there and they just like covered me with ice to just try and get my body temperature down. 3 months of recovery from that. Started regaining strength again. 14 months after the first transplant, I relapsed again. They had enough marrow frozen from the first time that Steve didn't have to give. And in the book, I describe, in detail the first one, and I say the second transplant was just half as tough. Half the time, half the mouth sores, half the fevers, no seizures. So this is the one that stuck. After that, I get to meet Steve, heading into my freshman year in high school. Just elated to be a 3-time cancer survivor, 2 bone marrow transplants behind me, 50-something surgeries. Like, I did it. This is my story. 1999, it's fall again, October. Take a ground ball to the chin, baseball practice. Feel a little lump and thinking like, oh man, like that hurts like a lot, and there's like a little bump here. Like, what's going on? Bump doesn't go down, and it continues to get larger. And they're like, is this a cyst? Is this an abscess? Like, what's happening? Finally take a biopsy, send it to the Mayo Clinic. It's a tumor of osteosarcoma, bone cancer, that was likely caused by radiation from my first bone marrow transplant. So something that was supposed to help me ended up damaging, another part of my body. More chemotherapy for that, no radiation this time. January and February of 2000, have 2 really big rounds of chemo. The chemo is strong enough that it damaged my hearing, so it took 60% of my hearing away, and it's nerve damage, so that's irreplaceable. After probably 3 or 4 weeks of like researching the best way to attack the tumor, my mom decided that just going in from the inside of my mouth and like scooping it out was not enough. She wanted to get a full margin, which meant removing my whole lower jaw. In order to do that, you need a bone to replace it. So we were thinking rib, part of my hip, or the fibula, which would have been the perfect size. At that point, I started wrestling with, okay, the motivating factor, the motivation of beating cancer was to one day play sports again. Get back to competitive baseball, competitive soccer. I love sports. Pick up sports. I'd play basketball and football in the neighborhood. Played golf since I was like 7 years old. Absolutely obsessed with golf. Like, I just love being active. It's part of my DNA. And I was fortunate to be born into, a family, like a dad that supported me and taught me how to play catch, a mom that attended all my games, and she was the one that cut the orange slices with a couple other team moms to have at soccer practice. And the guiding force behind my wanting to live was returning to sports. And when the time came to talk about removing my fibula and asking about the recovery from that, they all but said, like, you could probably do some stuff after, but you're not going to compete at the same level. Like, you're just going to be so far behind, both in terms of growth. I was already a smaller guy because I hit my growth spurt right when I was having chemo. So, now I'm 5'3", 127 pounds, which I'm never uncomfortable on airplanes. Never have to worry about convertibles. Kendall sometimes has to reach up high to get sugar at the top of the shelf, but like I love being my size. I've got a big heart, powerful heart from my years of soccer, so that's likely what kept me alive through it all, is this powerful heart and cardiovascular system. But reconciling the fact that I'm going to be missing the fibula from my left leg, it's going to be in my jaw now. The recovery from that is going to be 6 months to a year in terms of letting the swelling go down, letting the bones heal, all that stuff. So for me, the tumor was really like the pivotal point of like, if this goes wrong, like, I'm done. I don't want to fight anymore after this. It's a new cancer. I'm willing to do something to beat it. But if I suffer from this, like, I'm done. I don't want treatment anymore. Just let me die. So I'm at MD Anderson, March 16th of 2000. They remove, it's 12.5-hour surgery. It takes about 2.5 hours to go in and cut the lower mandible out and clear out the tumor, and then 10 hours or so to do the reconstruction. So removing the fibula from my left leg, removing a tissue of skin from that left leg that serves as my new gum, taking a skin graft from my right leg so that they can put it on the left leg where the tissue is gone, so that tissue starts to regrow. I had my jaw wired shut. I had a feeding tube going up through my nose down into my stomach. I had a tracheotomy. I was breathing through a trach. I had a catheter in my cash and prizes area, so I didn't have to go to the bathroom. And I was on a completely liquid diet. And a week after that surgery, again, miserable. Like, just everything in my body hurt.
How old were you during this?
14.
Oh my God.
So this was only 4 years after I was first diagnosed. And at this point, I've had, 50 or 60 something surgeries. And then the follow-ups come. A week after the main reconstruction, they go in and they realize there's an infection brewing. And I could smell the infection. And so they're like, we got to get in there now, clean that out. Otherwise, the whole bone could get infected, and then we would have to redo it again with your other fibula. Oh my God. So got to go in for the secondary procedure. And while that's happening, I've got the feeding tube going up through my nose down into my stomach. Well, it's cold whenever they put like Pedialyte or something in there. So I'm like, is there any way we can put it directly into my stomach? And they go, absolutely not a problem. We did it this way so that, we could ensure that you had the right nutrition going on throughout the procedure. So they're going to clear out the infection, inflate my stomach, put a new feeding tube in, and take the one out from my nose. They don't put me out fully with anesthesia. They just sedate me because they don't want me falling, all the way out. Like, they just wanted me to stay somewhat alert and awake so I would not stop breathing. I end up waking up like mid-procedure. So they had already finished extracting 2 more teeth and had cleaned out the infection in here. But they were getting ready to inflate my stomach and I was like wide awake, but I had a cloth over my face, wet cloth, to keep my eyes from drying out, and I was like handcuffed to the hospital bed, the operating bed. So I couldn't move and I couldn't tell them that I was awake, and my head was strapped down too. So they finally like hear me like moaning and turning and growling at them, and the nurse was like, oh, hey, he's awake, hit him again with the cocktail. So I immediately feel the onset of Demerol and morphine and Versed, this like cocktail that they gave me.
So you could feel everything.
I could feel all of it.
Oh my.
And I think my adrenaline was going so much that like I felt the incoming relief from the pain medicine, but also came a huge wave of nausea. So I'm nauseated at this point, and like the contents of my stomach start to come up, but my jaw's wired shut. I've got a feeding tube here and a trach. So where is this stuff gonna go? And so it comes up out through my trach. It's just liquid, like Ensure, like thick, milky, viscous liquid. Clogs my trach. I can't breathe. I'm trying to breathe as much as I can. Finally pass out, fall asleep, and that's when I woke up 3 days later, and I wrote, little white tablet that had like smiley faces that went into sad faces to monitor your pain level, and I just like crossed through them, and I wrote, just let it kill me. Like, I'm done fighting. Like, this is stupid. Like, what have I done to deserve being tortured? Doctors, nurses are incredible, but like everything that they're doing hurts me. So what can I do? Like, I don't want to fight cancer anymore. I want to be dead. My mom pulls out this huge basket of letters, 700 letters that all my classmates at Anderson High School had written for me. And it was all coordinated by my best friend Mark's older sister Sarah. She was a senior class president, like stellar soccer player, like just the queen bee of, the most popular, but also like kind and considerate and just passionate person. So Sarah had talked her senior cohort into declining to go somewhere like a hotel for their prom. Instead, host it at the school gymnasium, raise money for it, and then donate that money to my family along with all those letters. So she's like, I wanted to wait until you felt better so you could open these yourself, but she just laid them all out in front of me and just started reading me letters from my classmates. And I thought, like, gosh, here come the tears, this is so hard and I want to live. And she's like, look, I didn't go through 24 hours of labor with you just for you to quit, trying to make a joke. But I'm like, Mom, 4 cancers, all these surgeries, like, when's it going to be okay? And if it weren't for her, and if it weren't for the idea that life was possible after cancer, forget Ironman, forget Kilimanjaro, forget bike rides and events and, all the amazing things that I've been able to do. Just living life free of cancer was something I thought wasn't possible. And if it weren't for my mom, the doctors and nurses saying that, like, once you just get through this, if you can just fight a little harder, get through this obstacle, your life can be good. And I'm here now.
Dude.
So that's the cancer story. That's
so
part
crazy.
1.
Does that like feel real when you tell that story? Like, does it seem like, does it feel like you're just telling a story of like somebody else, or is it like, do you vividly remember a lot of
I
that
vividly
stuff?
remember it, and when I talk about it, and especially when I was writing the book, there were moments where I could smell the plastic of the oxygen mask that they would give me before a surgery. Or, my nose, my nasal cavity is basically empty in here. But on certain occasions, if I have like mucus buildup, or if I need to, sorry for the listeners if this triggers you, but, if I get like huge boogers in here and I have to like clear them out, sometimes that smells like what it did when I had packing in my nose, or when I had, getting done with all the aspergillus clean out. So there are those vivid times, and, our senses are so powerful that you have sight, sound, smell. Sometimes I can hear the beep of the IV pole. Sometimes I can hear the nurse's button go off. And there's just these little phantom noises, smells, or feelings that I get that are just visceral and real. And that reminds me that, I'm so glad I'm not there right now. I call it the stomach ache feeling. Like, when our stomachs are hurting, we're like, I would give anything to not feel like this. Oh, like I need to poop, or I need to throw up, or like I need to eat, like whatever it is. But then how often is our stomach not hurting and we're not like just thanking life,
Right.
you know, thanking God if you're religious, or thanking the gods if you're not, like, oh, like my stomach doesn't hurt right now. I should be thankful and happy.
Yeah.
But we only think of that when we're going through rough times.
Right.
So I want people to appreciate all the times.
Dude.